Conscience, at its real purest height, comes from the highest aspect of our being. We have an ability to just shove it away and not live in the light of it. And every time we do that, we dampen our connection with our higher self. Now, that line of thought that you've introduced will condition energy. It will manifest in the psychic and spiritual nervous system. You might start a flow of energy in the wrong direction by a line of thinking, downwards. That line of thinking doesn't end there, sadly. That causes a blockage in our chakras. The whole trajectory of what we should be doing, it should be an upward movement of consciousness.
Hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence. My name is Darren Bull, and this is the podcast helping you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. We all know how easy it can be to block out something bad that's happening in the world so we don't have to think about it, and to ignore our inner prompting to do something good. What we may not know is the price that we pay for it. So in this episode, Rich and I unravel the little-known hidden costs on our chakras and on our aura when we suppress our conscience, and what you can do right now to begin to unblock your chakras and reconnect with your own higher self. Richard also shares insights into what these blockages actually are, what actually happens within our subtle nervous system when we create them, and 2 ways that you can begin to transmute them today.
Richard,
Darren,
let me take us to our show for today. So if we're honest, I think we've all experienced that a comforting lie can be more appealing than a difficult truth, let's put it that way.
yes.
But these comforting lies, they all come at a price, and perhaps that price is more than we bargained for. And that's really the premise of the show today.
Okay.
The problem, or at least part of the problem, as you've stated to me, is what we have to do in order to block off our conscience. And I wanted to get into, just first of all, what you meant by that, so that we can begin to understand it in the context of what this show is going to be about, which is our chakras.
Yeah, well, I think humanity as a whole, all of us, different ways and different degrees, that's how we live. We block off our conscience if it prompts us at all. Of course, if you go all the way and become completely psychotic, you might say,
No problem. Yeah.
then you've almost lost touch with that conscience. It hasn't actually gone. It's a disconnect, actually, between us and our higher selves. But we have little glimpses, and that glimpse will be conscience. Now, let me just be clear here. Conscience and guilt can be 2 different things. They can be the same thing, by the way, as well. But you have guilt, which can be induced through conditioning.
I see. Yeah, not coming
It's
from
a
your
false
conscience.
guilt. It's
Yes.
not coming from your conscience. It's coming from what people tell you is the way you should be. I mean, it can be a moral guide and a correct one, and it can be an incorrect one. This is man-made. This is what we
it's a good
think.
distinction.
It's coming from the thought pattern of people. Conscience, at its real purest height, comes from the highest aspect of our being. It's our intuition. And it can be about absolutely anything. I mean, for just an obvious example, it can be about the state of the world. And people spend a lot of the time not thinking too much about the state of the world. A lot of people.
It's a classic thing to want to block out.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
they see it on television. They feel depressed by it. They feel helpless by it. If you feel you can't do anything, that's an out. Because you can.
Yeah,
you
that's
can
true.
do something. You might not be able to do anything materially, but you can certainly do something spiritually. I've come across over the years a number of people who've come to events that I've run, and after those events, they've come up to me and said something like this: "This has changed my life. This is exactly what I've been looking for. I am going to dedicate myself to this path, this approach of service to humanity." And a number of those people I've never seen again. Now, you could say they changed their mind. Yes, you could say that. Or you could say they've just turned away from it. But at that moment, they had a recognition of something more than you would get in the general world. It's very difficult, let me say this, on this level that we live on, this physical level that we live on, to connect with our higher selves a lot. It's not impossible, can't be, but it's very difficult. As a matter of fact, if we really did, and we've talked about this before, if we lived always in the light of our higher selves, we wouldn't need to reincarnate at all. The ascended masters do that.
Yeah.
The male and female ascended masters from various traditions and races and cultures in their past, they live always in the light of their conscience and higher consciousness. Now, what we will do, and it could be about anything, it could be about, personal conduct, it could be about financial conduct, it could be about our duty to the planet, to the world. It's uncomfortable and it's disturbing our life.
Totally.
And it's not necessarily what we want to be doing with our life. So we have an ability, if you can call it an ability on earth, to just shove it away and not live in the light of it. And every time we do that, we dampen our connection with our higher consciousness, our higher self. The reason we are here is to reconnect with our first aspect.
So we're actually undermining our whole purpose of being here when we do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so what's actually going on?
So internally, we either just sort of blank it out with things.
Yeah.
We come up with a line of thinking that justifies ourselves in our own minds for not doing whatever it is we should be doing.
Yeah.
Or stopping doing whatever it is we don't want to stop doing.
I think we can all relate to that.
And that line of thinking doesn't end there, sadly. That causes a blockage in our chakras.
You mentioned just a couple of things I'd like to come back to as well. You mentioned the aura, and I just wonder if we could just make sure everyone understands the aura and how it relates to the thoughts that you were talking about.
So we have an aura. Yes, we do. And it's composed of all our thoughts and all our feelings, and it lives in a subtle state around us. It's often described as an etheric counterpart of the physical body. But I would say that the body is a physical counterpart of the aura. It's the other way round. The real consciousness is the higher consciousness. The physical body is the reflection.
Because the physical body passes away, doesn't it?
Yeah. The aura is the life. The reality is God.
Got you. Yeah.
So
that's wonderful clarity and revelation.
Yeah. That comes straight from Mars Sector 6, actually, in a wonderful transmission, meditation for this age. And he reveals these things in there. And he calls it, which I think is much greater, because in the old days, they used to talk about Maya. And they used to see materialist living in the material world as a delusion. Of course, it's not a delusion. Materialism as a belief system is a delusion. If you believe that's all there is, that's a delusion.
Right. Yeah.
But material things aren't. They are a necessity, but they are a reflection of a higher reality. And that's the way Mars Sector 6 described it, and I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Because we need to live in the world, we need to be functional, and we need to be practical. And the Etheric Society, again, is extremely practical. But the aura is composed then of our feelings, our thoughts, our health is reflected in the aura, and our consciousness in general. And if you're able to see it at all, and people can see it, I've taught people to see it. I'm running an event actually on chakras where I teach people how to go about seeing it. And very often, not all of them, but maybe half or something of that nature of people will have a glimpse of it under the right.
I've been there, I've witnessed that.
Yeah, you've witnessed that.
Yeah.
It's not that hard, but obviously you can go a lot deeper into it. And you don't have to do it through vision. Clairsentience can have two meanings, actually. It can be psychic smell, or it can be psychic feeling. And you pick up the feelings. I bet lots of people have done this. The feelings and the thoughts. And what you'll then do is picking up their auric emanations. And that's what you're going to, when you say, I picked up your thought, I pick up your vibe. You might be on the phone and you can, without speaking, you can pick it up. That's an auric emanation that you're receiving from that person through the ethers of space to you. If you've got a strong connection with them, it can be easier to do at times. Or it can be more difficult, actually, too, because you're biased, maybe.
Yeah, true.
So that's the aura. But we ideally shouldn't have an aura at all. We shouldn't need it. In one way, it's an encumbrance. From a free flow of energy, an ascended master does not have an aura. That's one of the amazing revelations made by Mars Sector 6 in the 9 Freedoms. They bring whatever energy they need to whatever level they happen to be on at any given time. But we aren't at that stage. So we're working our way and we're transmuting. Now into that aura come the blockages. So one of them is starting where we started. When we don't listen to our conscience or our higher self or our intuition, if you like, we are having to introduce something else to block that in order to live with it. It can be extremely uncomfortable. It can be painful. People don't want pain. They can shove it aside. What I will say, though, one day we will have to turn back and face all those blockages. And when we do, the pain that we rejected will, in one way or another, come back to us.
Wow.
May not come for long, by the way. It'll need to, so that we can transmute it. It's sticking plaster. Now, it might be necessary sometimes. Sometimes it's necessary to block, to suppress certain types of thought and feeling in order to function in life. But it's not a long-term solution. And there'll come a time, and we have to know when that time is, and we have to be ready for it, when all these things will have to be released, because they all have to be transmuted.
Is there ever a case for suppression?
I think there is. Myself, some would say no, but I think we know there is. I mean, you can't go, you might have a thought, I want to hit that idiot.
I see,
and
yeah.
So
suppressing a bad
might
thought.
not, initially be in a state to control it, so you just suppress it, rather than hit them, and then you have to deal with it later. There is a practice you can use, and it's a wonderful one, and it's in the book, Realize You're in the Potential, called a mental hand practice, whereby when you have a thought like that, you can take hold of it mentally and pull it back into your solar plexus as though it was a mental hand drawing it back in. And then you can transmute it by using the violet flame practice, if those people know it, or if you like, just visualizing a white light, and then you'll transmute it. And actually, Dr. King said, without that practice, and by that I think he means that principle as well as that specific practice, you will never advance beyond a certain point, I think he said, it's absolutely essential to do that sooner or later. So the suppression, can be necessary. Can't go around doing, we wish some people would suppress some of their behaviors, don't we? Rather than carry on. But it's not a long-term solution. We'll have to deal with all those. But there's a difference, though, and this is a key point, I believe, between suppressing a wrong action, a wrong thought, for a right reason,
gotcha.
and suppressing a right thought, a right action that you're prompted to do. If you sort of reel back a bit, so I want to be really clear about this. If you have a bad thought and you suppress it, you haven't yet transmuted it, no. But you were right. Let's say you were right to suppress it. Let's say you wanted to thump someone and you stopped yourself you're still angry, but you stopped yourself. You haven't quite transmuted it. The thing you've introduced there to stop you doing is actually good. So you're on the way. And yes, you'll have to come back at some point and transmute the anger within yourself and so on. But it's a much easier, I would say, on the whole, or it's much more achievable task than the suppressions that you bring about when you don't do what you should do, or you suppress some prompting to act, to serve, to behave correctly.
Yes, yeah.
Or perhaps you're misbehaving and you're being prompted not to misbehave, and you suppress that prompting because you really want to misbehave. Whatever. Those things can go quite deeply into you, and I'm afraid with human beings, there's a lot of that has gone on through the centuries and through the lives. And so they're quite deeply rooted, some of these, and we really sometimes don't even know we're doing it.
Yeah,
That's the danger.
This is really the crux, I think, of what we were getting to in the introduction. I think you're right. It is. We don't appreciate the danger of it or how it inhibits our spiritual evolution. We rarely even talk about it, actually, as something that we need to focus on.
Yeah.
We might talk about spiritual practices, might talk about, going out and doing positive things, but rarely do we talk about unwinding the negative thoughts that we've introduced to block our conscience and therefore the connection with our own higher self.
Indeed. And you can do it internally, and you can do it externally through experience.
Oh, yeah, go on.
And this is key. Now, there's a wonderful Upanishad, which I don't have in front of me. The Upanishads is some of the wisdom of the Hindu sages many thousands of years ago. And what one I always expect from these writings is a focus on the inner path, because that's what they were focused on. They were detached from the world, and they were living in retreat in some form, in the forests very often, sometimes in the caves, You'd expect that. But this particular Upanishad, and these aren't the exact words, makes the point that it is wrong to neglect the inner life, that to just focus on the exterior world. Now, I would expect to find that in an Upanishad, but it then says it is also wrong to neglect the outer world and only focus on the inner life. And it says that is even worse.
Yeah, surprising.
Which is surprising and interesting. And I can see why, because in those words we often quote from the sixth freedom of the 9 freedoms by Mars Sector 6. There are those, and again, this is my paraphrase from memory, there are those that you regard as masters and adepts who are still warm in those places, referring to certain chakras, where the energy hasn't been transmuted and therefore isn't cold. It's still warm. And you can reach a certain level internally of great bliss, of great peace, and you can get stuck. You can get stuck there and you can lose your connection with service to all. And yet you're being prompted, and you must be being prompted by your higher self to serve all. And so even in that inner state, and even an advanced, inverted commas, person can suppress their conscience in that way by becoming too imbued in the powers, the bliss of a certain level, and they won't go higher. They won't go further. Now, experience is there, and this is why this again shows why reincarnation is necessary, because such people would have to come back into a life where they had certain experiences which triggered those blockages so that they could then deal with them.
That's such a helpful way to look at it.
In the outer world, you'd say they will learn the lessons of those experiences. In the inner world, you'd say they transmute the blockages in the chakras and the nadis.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very, very clear way to look at it. And actually, what you just made me think there is, even at sort of an entry level as you're beginning on the spiritual path, if you're not serving, by just definition, you're blocking out the prompting of your own higher self, because that's what it would be prompting you to do, because that is the growing realization of oneness within you.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to go forward and exploring spirituality, but you're not doing something to help us and act on that inner desire, which is naturally arising within you, you're blocking yourself on the path.
You are, because as the yogis would say, you've become attached. You've become attached to your own development.
Interesting.
And this is where, but there's this wonderful transmission actually from the Master Aetherius. It was an answer to a question. It's published in the book You Are Responsible, but it was actually delivered in 1954, before the Master, Dr. George King, went public with his contacts with the Master Aetherius, and he had a small group. You'll find that this is a statement, a very interesting statement made by the Master Aetherius. Evolution is experience. So brains are sensitized by experiences of different types, and by the repetition of these experiences. They are sensitized by the experience gained by living through these experiences. These are things that give you the essential sensitivity necessary in order to pick up and understand the higher aspects of mind, which is exactly what we're talking about here. And so it isn't only done internally, is my point. It's done through experiences, because the experience will trigger within the individual the need for an awareness of the lessons they have. And this will bring up, they will then have to deal with what I would call these blockages in the aura.
Yeah, no, that's so clear. And you can see, it also gives some context for the reason why certain experiences are there.
Yeah.
To help you, all prompting you in these different ways to help you to grow and evolve, and to unravel these blockages that are within you. So just looking at it from a metaphysical standpoint now as well, these blockages within you, I mean, what is a blockage? What is it blocking, and what is it made of? And
well, as I mentioned earlier, it can be a line of thinking. I don't want to put out negative thoughts, but there are people who think they're not very convincing thoughts, for long lines of, I'm not responsible for the world, or I can't do anything to help. These are all excuses. Or people they bring it on themselves. I don't want to reel off
Yeah,
all
sure,
the
sure.
many excuses people can come up with not to give service.
Yeah.
And likewise, if it's bad behavior in their life, they could be blaming someone else. Well, I'm not really getting what I want, so therefore I'm okay doing X, Y, or Z. And yet in the end, the higher self knows if you're able to listen to it. And it's such a fragile thing, our connection with what I say was the first aspect, or your higher self. And you don't want to tarnish it. Honestly, I appeal to everyone, including myself, not to tarnish that connection. Because you might think, well, I'll just do this. It'll be fine. And it might appear to be fine. But in the process, especially if it appears to be fine, in some ways, you've tarnished that connection. And it's going to be that much more difficult to gain it again, because you've introduced a line of thought. Now, that line of thought that you've introduced will manifest as energy. It will condition energy. It will manifest in various ways, such as a certain movement of energies through the nadis, which are the lines of force. There are many of them. Some say 72,000 of them, some yoga writings, connecting the different chakras. They are, if you like, the psychic and spiritual nervous system. You might start a flow of energy in the wrong direction by a line of thinking, downwards.
I see.
The whole trajectory of what we should be doing, it should be an upward movement of consciousness. And then from there, the lower centers can be activated and directed. All the centers are good, actually. I wrote this down, and if I may, I'll just read this to you.
Come to that. Yeah, please. Yeah.
And this is my take. So take a look on these different chakras that we have. There's 7 major ones. The practical functionality of the base center, the empathetic sensitivity of the sex center, the intelligent understanding of the solar plexus center, the peace-inducing love of the heart center, the metaphysical inspiration of the throat center, the all-knowing certainty of the Christ center, are all risen as high points into the one beingness of the crown center, through, with, and by the all-encompassing, beautiful, and beauteous force of magnificent glory we call Kundalini, from the incomparable grace of the Mother Earth. That's just a thought I throw out on the spiritual
Just
freedom
a thought,
show.
yeah.
But
profound and beautiful.
those would be my taste. But the underlying point that I mean, obviously there's more to all the chakras than I've just listed, but I've summarized certain features there that I've experienced and become aware of. And they aren't necessarily what you might think either. Because we often, let's take the sex center just as an example, we often associate with it some of the appetites. And I don't just mean sexual appetite either, with that chakra. And likewise with, there are many things one can associate with the solar plexus center, many things, of intellectual capability, of psychic capability, and so on and so on. They all have various aspects, but my point there is that when we remove the blockages, we can take those centers to their high point of functionality.
Got it. Yeah.
And I've tried to itemize what those might be.
Got you.
Well, not might be, what I believe they are. And they're not quite what you might expect. Even the sex center, mentioning that, it can bring psychic awareness and great sensitivity. And the base center, absolutely crucial. All crucial, none of them bad. We need to have a practical functionality in life.
Yeah.
And and we need to preserve ourselves and those around us. And the base center, in many ways, will help us, enable us to do that. I haven't done this. Let me say that. Dr. George King did do this. This is when you raise Kundalini in its entirety.
Yeah.
For me, that's work in progress. I have not got there. Let me stress that. We have to stay humble on this path, and we have to know what we don't know. And I know, and you do actually start to realize more and more what you don't know. But if we can take those high points, and raise them. They will feed into the higher centers as we go. When you reach the Christ center, then you know. You have a knowing. When you reach the crown center, you go even beyond knowing into being.
Bringing it back to the core idea here, it seems that actually a key to our advancement and to realizing the highest aspect of each of these chakras and bringing them upwards is the connection that we have with our own higher self and allowing that to influence us and for us to live in the light of that.
Yes, and to make that connection, we need to raise our consciousness.
Yeah, so it's both of those.
It is.
Yes.
It's very interesting, actually, because you asked earlier about should we ever suppress things. And I will say this, that, and I'm going to take up a copy of the 12 Blessings, and what we must never forget are the introductions by the great master, Saint Guling. You noticed, he says, this is before the 6th blessing. This is Saint Guling, an ascended master from this earth, but very advanced, actually on the governing council of the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy.
Got it.
And known as the keeper of the seal. Interesting, there is a reference in some theosophical writings to a Lord Ling, and I've often wondered if it's the same intelligence. Chinese, of course. Anyway, he is very connected also to the Aetherius Society, let me say that.
Got it.
But this is a quote. You noticed even this very night that your earth leader allowed himself only 2.5 minutes in which to gain rapport with me. All the manipulations necessary to heighten one part of consciousness and dampen another could be done easily in this time. So here you have a case where, to explain that, Dr. King, every time he took a transmission in trance, entered samadhi. Something I think is unique, and it's another subject, but one I love. But I haven't come across, and I've done mediumship myself, I have never encountered anyone who raised Kundalini through into a samadhic condition in order to be a channel for a high being. But here's the point that interested me in this, that he dampened a lower part of his consciousness. Now that suggests to me he didn't necessarily transmute it. And he was capable of that. I don't know when he first entered cosmic consciousness. Nobody does. Certainly before the 9 Freedoms was published, and some time before. In fact, I think he does say in one of his lectures about the 12 Blessings that he had entered cosmic consciousness more than once. So I think we're talking certainly by the late 50s, maybe by then. Either way, though, in order to gain that state, it wasn't necessary. This comes back, it's at a much higher level to your question about suppression, actually. It wasn't necessary for him, and he didn't have time to transmute every aspect of his consciousness.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It wasn't, he needed to enter a state, and he could do it by dampening a lower part and heightening a higher part. And so that can happen too, and everything has their function. But in the course of our evolution, though, at some stage, depending what we're trying to achieve, we will have to heighten every aspect of our being and take it upwards and higher and all the way up, ultimately to the crown center.
There were a couple quotes that we were talking about before the show that I thought would be a great way to end, because I think they go right to the point that you just described there. With both the Master Theorius and Master Sixth talking about heaven.
Oh, yes.
What it really is.
Yes.
And I believe you have the quote there from Master Sixth, but I'll start with the Master Theorius, who describes it as a state of consciousness only.
Heaven, absolutely, yes. Heaven isn't a place. It's a state of consciousness. But that's interesting too, because the higher realms, which you might call the heavens, are areas of consciousness.
Yes.
Brings us back to our first point.
Yeah.
So Mars Sector 6 says this: those few who have through great endeavor found their way into the realms of bliss will appreciate only too well the difference between these realms and the realms of material existence. But this difference is appreciated only by the few who have made this glorious endeavor, this trip into the heaven so often spoken of by your great masters. However, it is possible now, with the power we are offering to each one of you individually, for you all to make this trip into this place, into this peace. The very gods await to give you the fruits of heaven itself. And I would vouch for that. And one can. It's a wonderful thing. It's there. We can call on it almost and draw it to us. But there's the good point about when we do, we talked about what happens when we don't listen to our conscious. Let's talk about what happens when we do. When we do listen to it, when we do not just listen to it, we act on it, because that listening isn't enough. We've got to act on that. And we live in the light of it. Then we release these blockages. Then we transmute these blockages. Then we free up the flow of the higher energies into our higher chakras. Then we experience this heaven, this bliss. Not all the time, but it's always there.
Thank you very much, Richard. Let me say thank you to everyone who writes to us.
Absolutely.
With either the comments or the questions. We read them all, and we really appreciate them,
We do.
both Richard and I. I wanted to share this very lovely email that we got from one of our listeners. Dear Rich and Darren, what can I say? The shows are getting better and better and better. We eagerly await for them to arrive and enjoy them so much, we often listen to them again to catch and absorb the pearls which are consistently cast. We enjoy our group IQ, as we call it, discussing them as a family afterwards. I wanted to take the opportunity to offer our thanks and appreciation for giving to us all these wonderful insights and discussions about our wonderful teachings, and of course, your own fantastic and inspiring experiences, which I really appreciate, as it is so personal to you and such a wonderful visible example of success on the path. So inspiring. Thank you to you all.
Absolutely beautiful. What a wonderful thing, a family. Then they discuss the points afterwards.
Yeah.
It's a family. That's perfect, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's exactly what you would want, being able to bring this kind of spiritual discussion into that context.
Exactly.
And to be able to focus on it, as part of your growth in that way.
Certainly.
Hey, Spiritual Freedom Show family, thanks for tuning into the show. I think the most helpful thing that I take away from that show is the clarity and the insight into the inner and the outer path that we can follow to transmute these different blockages within our chakras. When we turn inwards, we face those uncomfortable truths that we have buried within us, those moments where we have ignored our conscience or justified some selfish action of one kind or another. The purpose of this is not punishment or just to lament our own behavior. It's transmutation. It's transforming these energy blockages with understanding and love. But the inner path alone is not complete. Life, after all, is about mastery over experience. And these blockages within us can be triggered by essential karmic experience which we must work through, the most important of which is the lesson of service to others. Why? Because service to others is the manifest essence of our highest and deepest meditations. The higher self naturally prompts us towards service to others. Acting on this inner prompting anchors this higher consciousness in the world by transforming these experiences into essential lessons that catalyze our spiritual evolution. Now, if you enjoyed that episode about unblocking your chakras, then do follow and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes that can help you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. If you're interested in more right now, I can recommend to you this video over here, which goes deeper into how advanced people use their chakras differently. Thanks for tuning into the show, and see you next time.